Yo, what up, TCK Potters? I'm your host, Sky Guasco. Welcome back to another episode of the Candlestick Kids Fantasy Football Podcast, aka TCK Pod. Today I'm joined by my man, Bobby LaMarco. We're going to bring in here in just a second. Today we are breaking down the importance of rookie running back draft capital. Bobby's done a lot of work on this previously. We wanted to talk through it a little bit more in depth and just give an idea of how much rookie running back draft capital specifically matters to those players coming into their first season as rookies in fantasy football. And then really, over the next 2 or 3 years, as well as we start talking about last year's rookies and that awesome running back draft class, what it can look at long-term. And then we started looking at some of these deeper dive guys that we talked about last week. We were looking at some of the dynasty stuff. We started talking about some of these Trey Sermons, you could have Michael Carter, Elijah Mitchell, Kenny Gainwell, some of these later round rookie and how they might pertain to their first year in fantasy football. If you haven't yet, make sure to subscribe right here on YouTube at the Candlestick Kids. You can also listen anywhere podcasts are found. Make sure to leave us a rate and review. 5-star rating would be appreciated, but we also want your honesty. Also, make sure to follow me on Twitter at my name is Sky Guasco. Follow Bobby LaMarco at Bobby LaMarco on Twitter as well. Let's bring in my man, Bobby. Bobby, what's up, man? I'm excited to get into this. We have maybe a series here. We'll see how this goes. But why don't you just kind of off the bat here, why don't you let us know what we're looking at today? And before we dive into your analysis, just kind of in general, why you took this angle on things and where the listeners can maybe find more of your information on this.
Hi, Sky. Good to see you again, as always, sir. The reason why is because it's dynasty time of year, and I have not been a huge dynasty guy. Prior to last year was my first real go-around, and I wanted to start investing my time, energy, and effort to learning more about dynasty. When I was going online and trying to research stuff, a lot of the articles I was finding are very long, convoluted, and I'm like, I just want to know the data. Give me the data. Give me the charts. Tell me how it is in simple. And that's what I did. So I write an article for football.rasball.com, and you can find my full analysis on here. I'm doing one for running backs, wide receivers, and tight ends, and to see what the impact of draft capital is on RB hit rate. And by hit rate, I mean I put benchmarks together to say what is a starting caliber running back, what's an elite running back, and so on and so forth for each position. But what I really wanted to do is just simplify everything. So all I did is I set a benchmark, and today we're going to talk a little bit about running backs. So really for me, 10 points per game. In the article, I break down why I use 10 points per game. It seemed like an easy number, but it's more to do with the fact that there's more running backs now today. There's flex spots. There's more leagues that have deeper flexes. So it's not just top 24 running backs anymore that are qualified starting caliber running backs. So when you look at that and you start looking into the top 30 range, it's about 10 points per game for running backs, and that makes them a starting caliber running back. But it factors in down years for running backs. It also factors in if there's an injury-plagued season. And so what I started seeing is also the type of players. You'd be very surprised when you start breaking down the numbers what guys fall in at 10 points per game and some guys that fall just below. So guys like, for example, Sony Michel is a good example. He finished just outside my benchmark. He was at 9.4 points per game. He's a notable first-round running back. He had 2 top 30 seasons, but the other seasons he's been in have been disasters. So he did not qualify. So that's where I kind of started drawing the line there. But really, it just starts with during fantasy draft seasons and during dynasty drafts, when you start getting into the 3rd and 4th round, a lot of us are taking shots on guys that were drafted in the 5th round, the 6th round. And I was thinking to myself, does that make sense? What are the numbers? So that's what the whole point of this podcast is today, is to tell everybody what the numbers are. Is it possible that a 5th round receiver becomes fantasy relevant or running back? And it is, but it's not as likely as you would think. So that's kind of maybe bringing some strategy to this. Maybe it might make sense to trade away a 3rd round pick in a dynasty restart and go get a guy that people might be down on. Somebody like a Rashad Penny, who has a 1st-round pedigree, who's a free agent next year. A Royce Freeman, who has higher draft pedigree, that becomes a free agent. It might make sense to take shots on guys who have the pedigree and still have some talent in the tank. So we'll discuss some of those topics today.
That's really interesting. And you've been mentioning the last couple of weeks as we've been talking dynasty about how you would rather do what you just said, which is essentially maybe give up, future who knows capital, third rounds, fourth rounds, even a second rounder if it makes sense, to go get a former first round running back who maybe hasn't had the opportunity, a second round or something, or somebody like Sony Michel, who I know isn't he's not exactly a target, but he's a former first round pick and he's been effective when healthy. And unless his knees are completely toast, which they might be, unless they are, then he could be an asset that's essentially free right now because nobody wants Sony Michel. But again, if he leaves the Patriots, who have 5 running backs, and goes to a team that only has 1 or 2 and gets that opportunity, like we saw Mike Davis get last year and again this year, then opportunity is king in fantasy football, of course. Okay, cool, man. Well, let's dive into this here. Let's jump into, you have a number of charts. So I'm going to let you kind of run charts and talk us through what you want to, when you want to. I would like to start with the main chart, though. So I'm going to bring that up in just a second and have you kind of talk us through what it looks like and how you built it. And then we'll break things down a little further. And then in the second half of the episode, we're going to look at this year's rookie class and see if we can maybe find some of these guys that we're looking to target based on draft capital primarily. And again, the importance of what that means. And then, of course, you have historical hit rates that go with that draft capital position that might help us choose one guy over another outside of maybe Najee Harris as the definite number 1. But who is the number 2? Who's the number 3 of the 4? Who are maybe some second rounders that we can target as well in our rookie draft? So awesome, man. Let's get into this here. I'm going to bring up the chart here. Boom. I'm going to kick you off to the side. Hopefully this works out a little bit more. There we go. And why don't you go ahead and take us through this boxed best you can and just kind of let us understand what all of this means here.
Yeah. So what I did is I looked over the last 10 years and I used Pro Football Reference data. And the great thing about Pro Football Reference is that they show you the draft year of the running back, but they give you the career stats. So what I essentially did is I went back over the last 10 years and I looked at every single running back that was drafted and by round, and I actually looked at their career stats to see if they averaged 10 points per game in half-point PPR. So essentially what you're seeing on the chart there is 4 columns. The round they're drafted in, which is self-explanatory. That's the round that identifies in the NFL draft that running back was drafted. The second column, which is total running backs drafted. This is the number of running backs drafted in that round over the past 10 years. So over the last 10 years, for example, 14 first round running backs were drafted. The next column is career 10 points per game and half-point PPR. So that shows how many of those 14 running backs have finished with at least 10 points per game for their career. So in this example, it's 11. And finally, the percent hit rate. So essentially, it's just the third column divided by the second column, and that gives us a hit rate. So 11 of 14 running backs that were drafted over the last 10 years in the first round have finished with 10 points per game in the half-point PPR for their career. Now, what we're not saying here is that every running back who ever was drafted had a top 24 season. That's not what I did. What I wanted to do is find sustained for fantasy success. How many guys were able to sustain multiple years of top 24 finishes, double-digit fantasy point seasons? That gives you longevity. Now, there might be guys on this list who didn't qualify because they had 1 RB2 season and the rest of the time they were not good. What we're trying to find is consistency. So when you start going through this chart, you could start seeing the dip really fast for running backs. So for first round running backs, there's a 79% chance that they're going to have at least 10 points per game in half-point PPR for their career. That's based on 10 years of data. To me, what that says is they just get opportunities. For running backs, opportunities are huge. And so in this case, when you're drafting a running back in the first round, they are getting immediate touches. So this kind of gives you, okay, it's good to know. And I know for a fact that Najee Harris and Travis Etienne, those guys drafted in the first round, have a very good chance of being fantasy starters immediately. Now, it might take a year or two, for example, because this is career points per game. But I know they're going to make an impact most likely in their careers and be fantasy assets. Now, all of a sudden, you see the numbers start to crater. Now, second round's at 45%, third round's 23%, and then day 3 picks, which is the last the last row, I actually put them all together. It's only a 5% hit rate. So that means only 8 of 150 running backs that were drafted between rounds 4 and round 7 have finished their careers or currently have a career average of 10 points per game and half-point PPR. So this is kind of where I started building some strategy, and that's when this is kind of the ideal situation to talk about when we say it might make sense instead of draft. If you have a deeper rookie draft and you're in the 4th round and you're just taking flyers on these 7th round running backs and 6th round running backs, it might make sense to trade that pick for a guy that's being left to dust like Rashad Penny or a Royce Freeman or even a Sony Michel, for example, who have higher draft pedigree and that have shown flashes in the NFL. Now, when I finally put this together too, a couple things that it's not shown here is I also looked at elite upside, guys with elite amount of talent. So guys that can get up to 14. So I actually upped the benchmark to 14 points per game because an RB1 over the last 10 years, the RB12 essentially, averaged 13.9 points per game and half-point PPR. So the RB12 between years 2011 and 2020, the RB12 averaged 13.9. So I used the benchmark of 14 points per game for this version. You could take the chart down, Sky. We're talking about something a little different. Now, when you talk about that, you start seeing some bigger gaps. So the number drops. Actually, I'm sorry. You can put the chart back up, actually. Yeah. So you can actually, when I'm talking about elite talent guys, it goes from 79% to 43%, which is kind of obvious. Less guys are more likely to be elite, have that 14 points per game. But it's the other rounds that drop significantly as well. So second round and third round running backs to be elite, it's 14% and 13%. And day 3 running backs, the likelihood of them becoming elite RB1s is 0.7%. Only one running back drafted has been a day 3 pick and has finished as a career with 14 points per game and half-point PPR. And Sky, I'm gonna give you a moment to see if you can guess who that running back is.
Day 3 running back that had 14 fantasy points over a season and half PPR?
For their career.
For the career.
Now I'll give you a hint. He's an active player.
Le'Veon Bell.
Aaron Jones.
Aaron
Jones was drafted in the 5th round. He's the only running back in the last 10 years drafted in the day 3 picks that averages 14 points per game for their career.
Oh, that's a good one. Lev, I think, was a 3rd rounder, so not day 3.
Second round pick, Lev Bell. Yeah, but that's the thing. So this has really been eye-opening for me to understand that, like, just not even for Dynasty per se, but just in general of understanding, okay, how high should I go after guys like Harris and ETN and Javonte Williams in year 1? But when you start comparing running back success to wide receivers, to tight ends, for example, which is funny, the wide receivers are actually less. They're actually at 45% and lower for first and second round wide receivers. So really, Javonte Williams has just as likely of an opportunity to become a successful, sustained fantasy running back as everybody besides probably Jamar Chase. So when you're doing rookie drafts, that's to me what pops in my head. And of course, when we talk Kyle Pitts, actually tight ends are up there. They're in the 70s as well, first-round tight ends. So, but that career benchmark is 6.5, which is, we'll get into it another time. But I think when I'm evaluating this, it made me realize that we're taking shots on all these guys in day 3, round 3, round 4 rookie drafts. And, you're picking these guys in the 7th, 6th round, 5th round, 7th round picks. The hit rate are so low. It's like if you can package some things together and move up in drafts to get a 2nd round pick or package 3rd round picks to get a more established player, I suggest that you do that because it's very unlikely to actually hit on a player who's drafted on day 3. In a lot of cases, day 2. I mean, as we just discussed, RB2s, RBs in round 3 is 23%. So every 1 out of every 4 are hits. So that's not even good. And that really only pertains to Trey Sermon because he's the only other guy outside those top three that was drafted in the first 2 days of the NFL draft.
What I think is really interesting here on this chart, and I know that podcasters were trying to break this down for you best you can because you can't see the chart. If you're on YouTube, of course, you can see it. And we recommend that you go check us out on YouTube either way, so you can see our faces, but also catch these charts when we bring them up on the screen. Might add a little more reference for you. So go check us out on YouTube at the Candlestick Kids. Give us a subscribe there, please, and leave your comments below. I think what's interesting here, man, just raw numbers, like 45 running backs have been drafted in round 4, 40 running backs in round 7. Now, between rounds 4, let's see, 4, 45, 5, 31, 6, 34, 7, 40, but career 10-point PPR or half-point PPR games, you have 8 total out of that mark there. For me, that's crazy. Obviously, NFL teams are drafting these running backs in bunches. I mean, 2, 3 at a time in drafts for depth, right? I mean, look at the 49ers. Obviously, I think that they knew that Jeff Wilson had something going on, so he needed a repair there, and they also can't necessarily count on Raheem Mostert, but they drafted 2 running backs, and they already had 4 on the roster, and you have the Patriots who do it annually and some other teams out there as well. So it's really interesting that looking at this chart here, only 14 running backs have been drafted in the first round in the NFL over the last 10 years. That to me is very surprising because in fantasy football, it's a completely different mindset, right? It's ridiculous, man. If you're in full PPR, you can see 2, 3 wide receivers, maybe Travis Kelce. If you're in half or standard, you might have 10 to 12 running backs go in the first round of fantasy drafts, but not the NFL there. So I thought that was really interesting. And also, 5th round running backs, 10% of those met that hit rate, which I thought was interesting there too. So I thought that was great, great work and great analysis. You have another couple of draft capital slides that you can pull up here if you'd like to and talk us through that one as well. And then we'll get into this year's class because, again, outside of Najee Harris, I think there's a lot of question marks of Michael Carter's got a lot of hype in fantasy circles. Javonte Williams does too, but is he even going to play this year? Travis Etienne is kind of a hybrid wide receiver at this point. Can we trust him? And last year, we keep saying it, Akers, Swift, Dobbins, Jonathan Taylor, 4 of the best rookies of last year's class weren't even relevant necessarily until the second half of the year. So what can we actually count on there with those hit rates? So what else do you have going on for the running back draft capital information?
Yeah, so this is the thing too. This is kind of why I've been bringing up Sony Michel and Rashad Penny because like we just showed on that chart, a 75% hit rate, 79%, my apologies, 11 of 14 averaged at least 10 points per game for their careers. 2 of the guys who missed are active today. That's Rashad Penny and Sony Michel. And Sony Michel is at 9.4. So it's not like he's completely a bum, but he just missed it. The only other player that ever missed the benchmark was David Wilson of the New York Giants, which breaks my freaking heart because I loved him. He was awesome, electric. But remember, he had the serious neck injury, and he never got off the ground. He had the fumbling issues early, but then he had that serious neck injury year 2, and he was done. So his career ended early because of injuries. So really what this tells me, listen, Rashad Penny, I suggest every single person goes to Pro Football Reference, types in Rashad Penny, and look at his stats. He has been extremely good when healthy. So when they declined his option this year and re-signed Chris Carson, they drafted DJ Dallas in the 4th round last year. This tells me that they're probably moving on from Penny. So if this year you're basically going to get maybe he fills some of the Carlos Hyde touches, you get to see him this year, and by next year you can see if a team goes out and gets him and says, "Oh, we're going to sign Rashad Penny, we're going to give him a chance to start." You just stole Rashad Penny this year because no one wants him. So, take a feeler. Ask, hey, listen, I have a 3rd round rookie pick. Some guy might be like, listen, just give me the pick. I don't really care about Rashad Penny anymore. Yep. And you'll know within the next year or 2 if Rashad Penny is just garbage and thrown away because you have just as likely a chance to hit on one of those day 3, 3rd round picks. So that was something also notable.
Yeah, and if you're going to take a risk anyway on a 3rd round running back or something who may not have a chance to play year 1, year 2. Again, my boy Royce Freeman, who nobody cares about anymore, was a great draft pick for the Broncos coming out of the Pac-12 and the Ducks. Led the nation in rushing. The dude was a fucking animal out of the backfield too. He did all the right things. But he was a third-round pick, and he fell to the wrong spot. They didn't really use him, and he wasn't incredibly efficient. And UDFA, random kid out of Colorado, nobody even knew about before the season, Phillip Lindsay shows up and blows him out of the water with back-to-back 1,000-yard rushing seasons. They bring in Melvin Gordon. The rest is history. So you're taking a risk on that guy anyway. Why not take a risk on a guy? Again, Sony Michel we keep bringing up, but I have no interest in him because I know the numbers are there technically, but he just doesn't look good. Rashad Penny's also been injured, but when he's healthy, the dude's explosive. And that's the type of guy that I want to take a chance on potentially if he can get a new opportunity. And even Royce Freeman maybe, who's going to be cheaper than both of those guys because nobody even knows about him anymore. So if you're going to take a risk, why not take a risk on a product you've already seen produce versus potentially somebody that's just going to be a flyer anyway. Yeah. Now, of course, that third-round running back could make it happen. We have seen the who just bring up Aaron Jones. We have seen some running backs. We have seen some running backs do well, and if they land on right positions, it could work out for them. But it'll be interesting to see when we get to this class.
Let's clarify something. When we say third-round running backs, we mean rookie dynasty drafts, not third-round picks. So, like third-round NFL picks are actually about 23% hit rate. They're actually not terrible. They're actually much more likely to hit than any day 3 pick combined. So we're not saying that. We're talking about in the 3rd, 4th rounds of your rookie drafts in Dynasty, the guys you're going to have – Trey Sermon's going to be gone by then.
Yep.
So you're really going to be going after day 3 picks at the wide receiver and running back and tight ends in the late rounds anyway. So what we're saying is for round 3 and 4 rookie picks in Dynasty leagues, it might make sense to take a shot on a guy like Royce Freeman or Rashad Penny if you can get them for those kind of picks. Some owners might just keep them. I'm not saying that they're just giving them away, but it's worth an ask. Royce Freeman, for example, I always like to think this. When he was drafted by a different regime. So he was drafted, but Vance Joseph was the head coach. And then the next year he got fired, and it was Vic Fangio. So there's he got maybe lost in the shuffle. That wasn't our guy. We didn't draft him. Yes, it was the same, GM and John Elway and stuff. But just remember, Royce Freeman got taken over for a new staff and then immediately go out and they got Melvin Gordon the year after that. So Royce Freeman really hasn't even got a chance to develop because he got overtaken by Phillip Lindsay and then Melvin Gordon comes in, new coaching staff who wanted their guy. So I just think that right now today, let me ask you, I would love to get, because me and you are Royce Freeman guys. We're both willing to take the risk. I want to get someone's opinion. We have to put up a poll.
I'm holding
online. Yeah, like Royce Freeman or a 3rd-round dynasty rookie pick, and see how many people would pull the trigger. Because I'm going to ask.
I'm going to put up a poll right now. I almost guarantee you. I'm going to say this is 80-20 best. In case of the 3rd-round pick.
Do Rashad Penny too. Do Rashad Penny.
But here's the problem, because if you say 3rd-round rookie pick, then you could get a quarterback, you could get Pat Freiermuth, you could get a wide receiver. We have to say 3rd-round running back pick or one of these guys. That's going to be the poll.
No.
You don't think so?
No, I don't think so. I think you got to do just 3rd-round pick. Because that's kind of the point. Like a 3rd round, you might get Pat Freiermuth in the 3rd. You probably will, which we can get to at some point in the future podcast. But I think it's got to be. I think it's the idea. Forget about 3rd-round rookie dynasty pick. Just 3rd-round rookie dynasty pick. Any position for Royce Freeman. Just say 3rd-round dynasty pick for Royce and 3rd-round dynasty pick for rookie dynasty pick for Rashad Penny. And I want to see. That's just all. Maybe this is. We should be talking about this on the pod, but it's good to know. I want to know because just based on the data that we're seeing today and talking about, it is Rashad Penny is an extreme outlier. Like outside of David Wilson, he's the only guy that hasn't even been remotely consistent at all. Because even Sony Michel had 2 top 30 seasons. So I think it's worth a shot. And, Scott, let me ask you, I have a guy that keeps asking me about Russell Wilson in my Dynasty League, I was thinking about asking him for a first-round pick and Rashad Penny. You think I should pull the trigger on that?
Russell Wilson for a first-round pick in Dynasty and Rashad
Single
Penny?
Single QB.
Who's your other quarterback?
I have Baker and I have Teddy B. So obviously I'd be a little bit short. But my team isn't really that win now. I have to make a decision on whether I'm going to win now or not. But
do it. Why not? Do it.
Right.
You might be able to sell it even higher for Russell Wilson, but that might be interesting. Poll is up. We'll see what happens by the end of the show. Let's move on here, man. You do have another graph that I want to have you pull up here quickly and get through, and then we'll get into this year's class.
Well, the graph is the same thing. It's not. This is just different positions. So we don't need to go into the different graphs because it's tight end, wide receiver data, which we'll touch on another episode. I think we should just get into the running backs this year and see what we can do, like, based on that. So do you want to just kind of talk through the guys that were drafted?
Yep. Let me bring them up to you. Let me bring them up to you here in order of your article, and we will get this. We'll get this moving.
I have it. I got it.
Okay.
I got it right here. So it's Najee Harris, of course, number one. Then it's Travis Etienne. Those guys were both drafted in the first round of the NFL draft. The historical hit rate for those guys is 79% to have 10 points per game and half-point PPR. Then it jumps down to Javonte Williams. He's the only second-round running back in this year's class. That historical hit rate's 45%, but it's higher than any receiver. So first-round receivers they're about 42%, and second-round receivers are at 38%. So Javonte Williams, like I've said this multiple times, is probably more likely to hit than any receiver not named Jamar Chase. Then the only round 3 running back is Trey Sermon. The historical hit rate is 23% for him. He's also the highest drafted running back by a Kyle Shanahan offense since Tevin Coleman in 2015. However, Tevin Coleman, his rookie year, played behind Devonta Freeman and barely got any opportunity. So just something notable. And finally, day 3 picks. There's a bunch of guys that were drafted on day 3. But just remember the historical hit rate for those guys is 5.3% to get half-point PPR. So 1 in every 20. There was only 14 drafted this year. So that means there's a 50-50 chance that even one running back will become fantasy relevant from that group. So that's how low of an opportunity it is. So if you're taking a shot on a day 3 pick, it's less than a 50-50 shot that anyone, not even any running back from day 3 in this year's class, will be fantasy relevant. So anytime in their career.
That's alarming.
Yeah. So your boy Kenny Gainwell. Your boy Kenny Gainwell ain't taking nothing.
Yeah. We'll see about that. Bobby did a great player spotlight. It's a new series that Bobby and I are doing. We are going to highlight one player or situation from a team throughout the rest of the summer and break those down for you. Bobby did the first one on Tuesday, and you can check that out. It was about Miles Sanders. He and I have gone back and forth about Miles Sanders, and my argument, I guess you can say, I love the player. I just haven't seen it on a consistent basis. They also now have a different coaching scheme, and they bring in 3 running backs this season, which either just they want depth, so they won't take him off the field. They're worried about injury, or he's not as efficient in all facets of the game. Whatever it may be, could be a concern there. And I think Kenny Gainwell, even though he's a 5th-round pick, could take some away. Najee Harris makes sense, man. 79%. I think we all expect Najee Harris to be minimum 12 to 15, could be top 10 if he gets the work there.
Yeah, the other thing with Najee, though, it's not about if he's going to be fantasy relevant. It's how good is he going to be? Because I know for a fact that Najee Harris is going to be a top 24 running back. I have absolutely no doubt in my mind this guy's going to be a rock-solid RB2. But the question starts to become, is he going to be an RB1? Is he worth a top 12 RB pick? Because we're already hearing stories between Najee Harris, look at what Le'Veon Bell used to do. And that's the problem I have with Najee Harris. It's not if he's going to be fantasy relevant. I know for a fact this guy is going to be rock solid, but is he going to be better than the guys you're getting at RB 12 to 15? Obviously he's already going ahead of Clyde Edwards-Helaire and Miles Sanders and J.K. Dobbins, but where has it stopped? Austin Eckler, Joe Mixon, those kind of players. I doubt he's going to get to the Nick Chubb range, but I'm saying, that's the question I have for you, Sky, is we know Najee Harris is going to be good. And we've kind of talked about this already. We both think he's like RB 15. But has anything changed recently based on anything you've learned?
No, not necessarily. I mean, again, I think I can't see him passing any running back up at the top there that I might have a question mark about. Najee Harris isn't going to compete with. Like, he's not going to get as high as Aaron Jones, and Aaron Jones is going to change depending on Aaron Rodgers. Any preseason injuries, I'm getting a little bit scared on Saquon, to be honest with you. But again, he's far higher than Najee Harris is going to be. You can have question marks about Alvin Kamara, but still, I mean, he's just in a different range. So, no, I'm not worried about Najee Harris. Nothing's changed. He's still 15 for me because I just want to see what happens. He could easily be top 12 by the time we start, and he could straight up finish top, 6. I mean, he could finish top 6 by the end of the season if he gets that workload. We'll see what happens. And, of course, it really comes down to how much he plays, because with the 17-game season, very, very, very few running backs play a whole season. Very few. I think last year, of the top fantasy guys, of the RB3s or whatever, Nyheim Hines and Derrick Henry were the only two to play a full season, even one game off. So I think you got to be careful with that. I do think he has top 10 potential for sure, even top 6 potentially as well.
The other problem is, listen, everyone talks about pass volume. Like, the Pittsburgh Steelers last year were tied with the Titans for the fewest target percentage to running backs at 12.4%. They were tied for dead last. So not only were they dead last in adjusted line yards for offensive line, but they were dead last in target percentage to running backs. I mean, this team they have 3, and they brought Juju back. If Juju left, I would say, okay, I would feel a little more comfortable with the possibility of the running backs taking more roles. But then they draft Pat Freiermuth to back up Eric Ebron. So now they have the tight end position doubled down. They also still have James Washington to back up any. So there's not even a huge drop off. Who's another guy I love, by the way? Another deep dynasty name I'm infatuated with is James Washington. We'll talk about that another episode. But this is just kind of my thoughts about Najee Harris. Like, everyone's talking about the improvements on the offensive line. Like, what improvements? We don't even know. They didn't draft an offensive lineman until the 3rd round. And they didn't bring anybody notable in, and they just lost 3 guys. So we can go all day about this. I know that Najee Harris is going to be good for fantasy, but the question is he going to return value at a top 12 running back ADP in the early 2nd round? That's my problem. That's the only thing I'm second guessing, unless we start hearing in camps that Najee Harris is becoming. And the good news is we're going to have preseason this year.
Yeah.
So we'll see it. Maybe we get to see it the first couple of weeks that, Ben's dumping off to Harris and he's doing his thing. Could be a thing. I don't know. But that's my problems with Najee Harris.
Yeah, I think he should be fine. I just want to blast through these really quick here with final thoughts, and then I think we'll get out of here. Travis Etienne, also, 1st round, but again, James Robinson's in front of him. Najee Harris is the number 1 guy. Travis Etienne, I don't think will be the number 1 guy, even if he's the 1B. It's going to be an interesting situation there. Javonte Williams, you and I talked about at length last episode, and we believe in him long-term, but probably not until next season or the second half of this season, unless Melvin Gordon goes down. Trey Sermon looks a lot more juicy now because Jeff Wilson's out of there, but Raheem Mostert is going to be the guy as long as he's healthy. Yeah. And then you also have JaMychal Hasty, who's been around and was somewhat productive. Wayne Gallman is still around as of now. I do expect 1 or 2 guys to be cut from the 49ers by the time week 1 comes, and Elijah Mitchell would move up the depth chart at that point as well. But Trey Sermon looks like, again, the opportunity could be there for him. We look down the list a little bit here. Kenny Gainwell we talked about, but there's also Michael Carter as well that the fantasy community is just like super gushy about, which I get it. The dude was awesome in North Carolina, but the Jets are horrible. Period. The offensive line's a lot better. They have a new quarterback. They have a new coaching scheme. They have a run-first coaching scheme. I get all that. I hope the Jets do well. And a personal childhood friend of mine is a coach for the Jets. I mean, I'm rooting for him. But I am worried about Michael Carter specifically. And again, historical hit rate for day 3 running backs, 5.3. The chances of him doing anything as a rookie to be fantasy relevant, and let's talk about, again, top 10, even RB2s, without a couple injuries is going to be tough for Michael Carter. He's the one running back that everybody loves, and I don't.
It's just, well, the thing with Michael Carter, like you said, so even if you look at early day threes, if you just do 4th and 5th round, which is where he fell, it's still about 7.8%. So that's still less than 1 in every 10 running backs that get drafted there become, in, let's say, career 10 points per game. That's not even a top 24 back. That's like top 30 to 35 range for running back. So Michael Carter to me too is like, this is kind of what I've been talking to you about a little bit with Ty Johnson is we don't know anything yet. My thing is you can get Ty Johnson for free in the last round, and he's got a little more juice and experience, but everybody's on a clean slate. Yes, Michael Carter is the guy that this coaching staff went out and drafted. But the Shanahans have taught me one thing is that they just don't dive into rookies. I mean, look at what they did with Tevin Coleman. Tevin Coleman was drafted by Shanahan when he was with the Falcons, and they actually used Devonta Freeman, who was drafted the year before by a different offensive coaching scheme, and they used him instead. So it's not foreign that they have come in, say, oh, actually, that guy's pretty good. He knows a couple things. We're going to use him. So I am a little concerned from Michael Carter because he's already creeping into the 7th round, and he's going to probably, if there's any reports early on that he is the starter, great. Then I'll probably be in because I like the Shanahan scheme. They've done a lot of work on the offensive line as well. So, but like you just touched on, really outside of the 2 first-round running backs, there isn't a lot of guys based on this too, the historical significance of the likelihood of these guys becoming fantasy factors. But we're just talking about this season for redraft. If dynasty, it's even harder for these guys to even become relevant at some point. So I just think if you're doing a restart, let's say you're doing a dynasty restart league this year, if it's the first time doing dynasty, don't overreach for guys that haven't proven anything yet, because this just shows me that find the established guys that you know can play, because Michael Carter has a 7.8% chance of being legit. So don't draft him over a notable guy that's already done it before. So I think that's another key factor here. But overall, we can get into Javonte. If you want to take it first, I've already written an article about Javonte. I love Javonte Williams, but I do think he's more of a dynasty guy than he is redraft. Yeah. But go ahead.
Me too. Me too. And we've talked about him at length. I think one of the player spotlights that I was interested in doing, unless you get to it first, is going to be the Broncos. Our team breakdowns are going to be a whole nother section of what we do coming up in our draft guide, coming up later this summer. So we'll do team breakdowns, but I wanted to specifically talk about the backfield situation there. And Bobby, you did another great article on Pat Shurmur and what he means as a coach. And, so Javonte Williams, I'm all about that. But again, I don't think he will be doing much this year in regards to fantasy unless Melvin Gordon does go down, because Melvin Gordon's still, at least decently effective for fantasy as an RB2 and reliable option there. So I don't need to get into Javonte Williams, but this is really interesting to look at. Again, I'm going to bring this up here on YouTube, and for the podcasters, I want to roll through this one more time. Drafted in the first round of the NFL draft, 79% hit rate. That's a career of 10 points per game in half PPR. Second round draft picks, 45%. Third round draft picks, 23%. Fourth, fifth, sixth, and seventh rounds, an average of about 7% hit rate. And they obviously falls off a cliff there. So first rounders, we all know the first rounders. Second rounders, we can feel good about. Third rounders are a bit risky, but we can also feel good about them to a certain extent. And then after that, fourth, fifth, and sixth, seventh rounders are really tough. And that's tough for a guy like Elijah Mitchell, who I think a lot of people love to get the opportunity for the 49ers. Yeah. But A, he's buried on the depth chart. B, he's buried in draft capital. So we'll see if he ever actually gets an opportunity, because look, this is the time of year that coach speak rules everything, hype rules everything, good stories float to the top, bad stories get kind of pushed under the rug because we're still a couple months out, no big deal. It's going to be tough to read all of these running back rooms, especially the deep ones, but 49ers are going to probably cut maybe a Wayne Gallman and Jermichael Hasty. And if they do that, then you could look at a late round guy like Elijah Mitchell. But otherwise, even my boy Kenny Gainwell, who I'm more kind of just trying to poke jabs at you about this Miles Sanders things, but on the real, he's a guy that you could stash because who knows? I mean, if he becomes a James White because they need him, like, sweet. He's a great pass catcher. But last year, Keyshawn Vaughan came to the Buccaneers, who had no running backs outside of Ronald Jones, and didn't do anything. He had a couple of drops. He had a couple of fumbles. He got injured. He had COVID. Brady got rid of him. And now they got in Leonard Fournette to fill the void, and Keyshawn Vaughan is now just falling off the map. He was last year's Michael Carter, if you remember correctly, and really didn't end up doing anything. So just be careful when you're evaluating draft capital.
I think, there's a lot to take in right there. And there's a couple things I want to talk about Trey Sermon first is, that day 3 pick means something. It means a little bit that they went up and got him in that round 3 pick does mean something to me because it is Kyle Shanahan. And Kyle Shanahan can make John from accounting look good on the ground. So Shanahan's scheme has been awesome for constantly over years, but there's been so much turnover because of injury that you have to just monitor. I do not believe that Raheem Mostert is going anywhere. I do believe Raheem Mostert is going to be the main guy on the ground. But with McKinnon, Coleman, and now Jeff Wilson all gone, there's a huge void at the quote-unquote passing down position because Raheem Mostert was not getting the passing game work. He was not down on 3 downs. He was not playing on 3rd down. So, like, if Trey Sermon is able to carve out any type of role that is more of a passing game focus, that can help. But Trey Lance is a huge caveat in this whole thing because I've done research on a different topic, but mobile quarterbacks and the impact for running backs. And whether we like it or not, it's not a good thing for running backs long-term to have a mobile quarterback because they do typically have about 5 points per game on average less in half-point PPR for running backs with mobile quarterbacks. So there's just less of the pie. Mobile quarterbacks take rushing opportunities away from those running backs, and they don't check down to their running backs as much. So long-term Trey Sermon, that could be something that caps his upside. But overall, I'm still willing to take a shot on a guy like Trey Sermon than I would Michael Carter or anybody else just because of the draft pedigree.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, Jalen Hurts does not help Miles Sanders. Is that what you just said?
It is true. That is a fact. You are right. I agree.
Excellent. Problem solved.
Yeah.
Dominated. Miles Sanders off the board.
The thing is with Miles Sanders last year, I mean, he did have 2 RB1 in the 3 games that they had with Jalen Hurts. The offense was better. But when the offense is terrible and then you get Hurts, it's better. But if Wentz was really good, it would be up here. So I'm just saying it's better with Jalen Hurts than it was with Carson Wentz, bad Carson Wentz. At least if you're not a mobile quarterback and you also can't complete passes, that's the worst case scenario. So that's the loophole in that little argument you just had. So, but you're right. Yeah, it's true. It is true. I've done the research on it. It's just a great tiebreaker. But overall, I think Trey Sermon to me is someone that, like, when you start looking at these 2nd round running backs get pushed up in rookie drafts too. Like, running backs start going earlier than you expect. I was in an industry draft, a rookie draft, and the 3rd round running backs that were going are like Elijah Mitchell. Yeah. And you're just like, wow, this is crazy. So, like, you start looking at receiver. But my suggestion is that unless you know something we all don't know, that all these talent evaluators don't know, and you start getting to the 3rd and 4th round of your rookie dynasty drafts, I would start poking around to see if guys are lower than expected on these former players, even guys from last year that might, like Byron. We talked about this. Edwards from the Raiders is a good example of a guy who has more draft pedigree than a day 3 pick. Take a look at the last year or 2 of guys. Keyshawn Vaughan, another great example. Royce Freeman, and see what you can get. Maybe you can trade for one of those guys who have more draft capital and have more upside long-term than just a random day 3 pick out of the 2021 draft.
Absolutely. And it's going to be interesting. I was just thinking in my head really quick. I don't have a list compiled, so I know I'm going to leave some guys out. But I think of Cam Newton, mobile quarterback, Patriots running game, pretty much obsolete outside of a couple of decent performances. Josh Allen, the Bills forego completely and go to the pass game because he can run the ball basically just as well as running backs. Mitch Trubisky was just fine as well. You have it there. And of course, then you have the top dogs, J.K. Dobbins was awesome, but he would be a lot more awesome if he didn't have Lamar Jackson running for 1,000 yards per season as well. So it'll be really interesting to see what happens in the 49ers scheme, because since Shanahan's been there, they've not had a mobile quarterback. The last mobile running quarterback that they had was Colin Kaepernick, and that was before Shanahan. So they've had pocket passers since then, and we'll see what happens with the run game there when Trey Lance gets the opportunity.
It's just, you got to understand that we're not saying it's not that mobile QBs can't have a good running back. It's not that. It's just the likelihood is these are the little things that you need to look out for. Any little edge you can get, any tiebreaker in a moment that you're looking at two running backs, maybe looking at an Austin Eckler versus a guy who has a more mobile quarterback like a J.K. Dobbins, and you're like, oh man, which guy do I go with? We're just letting you know that typically, I have the data here. It's just like, I was shocked. I will admit, I thought that ground games would be more efficient. They're not, because the raw volume overall is not the same. Plus all the passing work, it's about 75% passing work that drops. This is what I'm talking about with guys like Alvin Kamara. Jameis Winston versus Taysom Hill is freaking really important for Alvin Kamara's fantasy success. Mm-hmm. Whether we all want to pretend like it isn't, it is, because Alvin Kamara right now is consensus easy top 5 pick, maybe even top 4. And he will not return value if Taysom Hill's the quarterback. He'll be a low-end RB1. He'll be a borderline first-round pick. But these things are important, because last year, I have the data from last year. You're looking at the Bills, the Giants, the Texans, the Saints, the Seahawks. The Saints and the Eagles are the only two teams that had really huge seasons for running backs. And the Saints, that's because Taysom Hill started 4 games and he ran for a bunch of yards. It's mostly Drew Brees. So if you take them out, it actually drops even further down and makes the difference even bigger. So I just think that this is things you have to look at. I know this is the NFL Draft Capital podcast, but this ties all to Trey Sermon and Jimmy G. If Jimmy G's the starting quarterback, I think that's better news for Mostert. I think that's better news for a guy like Trey Sermon. So it's just something that we just like to caveat in this whole discussion. But I think this is important. Day 3 picks, get more creative in drafts. You don't have to make that pick. If you're in a rookie draft on and you're in the 3rd, 4th round, take a look at rosters and say, oh man, I forgot that, some of the 2nd round running backs from last year, 3rd round running backs last year are now afterthoughts, like Keyshawn Vaughan. And you might be better off taking a shot on Vaughn than taking a shot on a day 3 running back from 2021. So just any little edge you can get. That's kind of the point of this podcast. And also, like I've touched on too, go and research free agents for 2022. Like I talked about Rashad Penny and Sony Michel and Royce Freeman. Those guys are free agents next year. Their situations can change really fast. They have really good draft pedigree, all those guys. And they could easily become and actually Sony Michel is in the trade offer for Julio Jones right now, according to some reports, for a 2nd round pick and Sony Michel. If Sony Michel lands in Atlanta, that could be interesting. He could now be competing with Mike Davis, who I think probably might be more of a fan favorite. But I think Sony Michel, to me, I agree. Because of the knee issues, he could be like Todd Gurley light. He doesn't even catch passes. And then that knee issue might be hands off. So let's just stick to Royce Freeman and Rashad Penny. But that's just kind of the idea. So you go to Spotrac or our lads or any of those sites and check out the current, the newest 2020 or the 2022 free agents, and just get creative and offer trades, because we're telling you now the hit rates for day 3 picks are just so low that you're better off taking a shot on guys that maybe have more established NFL stats already.
Absolutely. Bobby, any last thoughts on draft capital for running backs before we pay some bills and get out of here?
No, well, the thing is, I will say, we didn't really talk a lot about Travis Etienne. Obviously, it makes a lot of sense. And I think if we're talking about strictly a redraft perspective, with Travis Etienne, I do believe that he's going to be a fantasy factor. I think he's going to be a fantasy established player. But early on in the season, and Sky talks about this all the time, is that with rookies, you have to be patient. I do think that down the stretch of the year, Etienne is going to be a better player. But I just would watch out. Don't draft Etienne for where you think he can be at the end of the season. Be rational and draft him at the right cost, because you need to win games the first 7 to 8 weeks. And when you're drafting in the 4th round and taking ETN there, you're passing up on some premium receivers like Julio, Chris Godwin. So just be careful with that stuff. Yes, he will probably end up being a fantasy asset, but there's no guarantee he's going to be elite. Because that's the biggest caveat there.
I agree. Great work, man. Great breakdown. One more time before we get out, I'm going to give 2 shouts out, of course, to Jersey Jungle and Bomb Banana here in just a second. But Bobby, please remind everybody where they can find your content on this topic specifically.
Yeah, so if you guys go to football.rasball.com, my article is already out on running backs. You can see all my thoughts, all the historical data there. The wide receiver article will be coming out in this week, and me and Sky will jump on and probably have a podcast about that as well. So you can follow me on football.rasball.com and find all the information that we just talked about today on there.
Catch the article on his Twitter as well, at Bobby Lamarca. Before we get out of here, man, let's give a couple quick shouts out. Want to give a shout out to the Jersey Jungle. As always, make sure to DM them on Instagram. The Jersey Jungle bringing game authentic jerseys. You can see the Julio Jones behind me is from the Jersey Jungle. Use the promo code TCK to receive 10 or 15% off of 1, 2, or 3 jerseys. They have all sports, hockey playoffs going on, basketball playoffs going on, baseball in full swing. They also have custom jerseys. You have home and away. They have throwbacks. They have soccer if you're into that. They have other alternative sports. Make sure to hit up the Jersey Jungle. DM them on Instagram at the Jersey Jungle. My man Trenton will take care of you. Use the promo code TCK to receive 10% off of 1 or 2 jerseys and 15% off of 3 jerseys. Also, we want to go to Bomb Banana Hot Sauce, new sponsor of the podcast. Use the promo code TCK at seekthespice.com for 10% off of your order. Bomb Banana Hot Sauce, banana-based hot sauce, not flavored. Once again, seekthespice.com. 4 friends out of the University of Michigan put together this awesome hot sauce. Started with bananas. Word on the street is they might be going to other fruits as well. I would love maybe a mango or a peach, maybe a raspberry hot sauce. I think that would be absolutely delicious. You have the red style right there over Bobby. That's the muy muy, a little more spicy. You have the white style over my face here on YouTube. That is the more mild flavor there. Once again, Bomb Banana Hot Sauce. Go check them out at seekthespice.com. Bomb Banana Hot Sauce, banana-based, not banana-flavored. Shouts out to both of our sponsors. Bobby, unrelated to football, before we get out of here, because you're wearing the Padres hat, I'm wearing the Giants hat. My Giants are 1/2 game ahead of your Padres right now. 2 of the best teams in all of baseball reside on the West Coast in California. You and I are both fans. I wish you well in a great battle in the NL West, my man. All right, Bobby, always a pleasure, bro. We're going to be back here with another player spotlight. I'm going to be dropping that tomorrow. Very excited. I'm going to be doing it on Matt Stafford and what it means for the Rams overall. Incredible situation. I did a lot of research on this player spotlight here with Matt Stafford and came up with a lot of nuggets. I text Bobby about halfway through my research. I was like, bro, I'm reaching for Matt Stafford. He's a dark horse MVP for me, probably. Yeah. And as much as I don't root for the Rams because of my Niners, holy shit, I'm all on board for Matt Stafford.
You got a teaser? You got a little teaser for us or what?
Yeah, I got a teaser here for you.
Let's tease it.
Absolutely. Here, actually, I want to bring it up here real quick if I'm going to do it. If I'm going to do it properly.
By the way, yes. Our early poll, 80% is 3rd round pick.
Exactly. That's what I was worried about, because people are not going to want those washed up, quote unquote, names. Right. So, yeah, I'll give you a quick teaser. 2 little things here really quick, and then you can catch the rest of my player profile on Matthew Stafford, new quarterback of the Rams, on tomorrow's podcast here. So he gets an upgrade kind of across the board from Jared Goff and who went to the Lions. Having Matt Stafford come over to the Rams is an upgrade pretty much everywhere. But Matthew Stafford gets an upgrade himself in 2 different categories, going from the Lions to the Rams. He gets an easier division as far as pass rush goes. The NFC North, the Bears were 4th last year. The Packers were 15th, and the Minnesota Vikings were 32nd. They were horrible. We know that, but an average of 17th best pass rush in the NFL in the NFC North, where he was with the Lions. In the NFC West, his Rams are 3rd, so that's great. He doesn't have to play them, obviously. But then the Cardinals, 21st, Seattle Seahawks, 26th, and my Niners, 29th, with DeForest Buckner going to Indianapolis and, of course, losing Nick Bosa. That will increase significantly. But as of last year, they were 25th in the NFC West on pass rush. So that's an upgrade from him switching divisions there. Then O-line ranks from last year, the Rams overall 3rd offensive line, according to Pro Football Focus. The Lions, 13th ranked. The Rams pass block win rate, which is holding a block for at least 2.5 seconds for the quarterback to get rid of the ball. The Rams were 7th in the NFL in pass block win rate. The Lions were 20th last year. So the Rams were kind of deemed a bad offensive line last year outside of Andrew Whitworth, but they're getting healthy and hopefully they're getting patched up once again here, and they get Matt Stafford a little more savvy behind the line of scrimmage, multiple arm angles and mobile as well. So very excited about this. Tune in tomorrow for the player spotlight for Matthew Stafford. Tune back an episode on Tuesday to 392 where Bobby broke down Miles Sanders. Leave a comment right here. Hit us up on YouTube. Let us know any player you would like us to spotlight for you. Maybe it's a personal favorite or it's a fantasy guy for you, whatever it is. Or maybe it's a backfield. Maybe it's a wide receiving core. Maybe it's a coaching change. Whatever it is, we want to do a player profile or a spotlight for a team overall. For each team heading into the summer, let us know what you got for us there. And also, I'll drop another little teaser and we'll get into this more next episode. We are looking for more members on the TCK pod. Bobby and I are going to be full-time throughout the summer. Dewey's and Lucas are stepping aside for a few months, doing some personal endeavors. We do this every single season. You guys know that I'm in full support of that. Family, work, school, life, it's all good. So they are stepping aside just for a little bit, still on the team. It's all love, but they're stepping aside for a minute. Bobby and I are taking you through the rest of the summer, but we have a lot to do. We need a lot of help. We have a lot of information to gather. We have articles to write. We have episodes to prepare for. We'd like to have more guests on the episodes as well. If you're a content creator and you want to help and join our team, reach out to Bobby or myself on Twitter at our names, Bobby Lamarco or Sky Guasco, or hit us up here on YouTube as well or on Instagram and find us and let us know what you can contribute to the TCK pod. We're looking for writers. We're looking for content creators. We're looking for social media help. We're looking for people that want to jump on the podcast and bring value to the Candlestick Kids. So if you're one of those people, feel free to reach out and we will do what we can to get you on the team if it makes sense for all parties. All right, little sneak preview for Matt Stafford there, but a great rookie breakdown for the running backs on the Draft Capital. Next week, we'll get into the wide receivers. Once Bobby drops that article, make sure to check them out again, football.rasball.com. Make sure to check out Bobby Lamarco on Instagram at Fantasy Football X Factor. You can find TCK on Instagram at Fantasy Football _TCK Pod. Find us both on Twitter at our names. Leave us a rate and review anywhere you listen to the podcast and give us a subscribe and a comment below on who you want in another player profile and spotlight or who you're most excited about for your rookie running backs now that you have taken into consideration Draft Capital. It's always a pleasure. Heading in on 400 here. We got episode 393 in the books. Shouts out to Bomb Banana Hot Sauce. Shouts out to the Jersey Jungle. For my man, Bobby Lamarco, I am your host, Sky Guasco, and we are out of here.